Hello everybody, welcome back to Acoustic Scribblings. My name is Jordan, thanks so much for watching. Today we're going to be doing a Squier Affinity rebuild. So I have a Squier Bullet Telecaster body and all the parts are off of a Squier Affinity that I bought a few weeks ago. I also did an unboxing where I made fun of the way YouTubers always do their unboxings and essentially everything else. Guitar YouTubers, not all YouTubers. But all the pickups, all the hardware, everything's off of Squier Affinity. So the reason I'm doing this build is because I want to show you guys how easy it is to do, like to rewire pickups and to do your own, basic luthier work. So that if you have a pickup problem or you break your neck, you break the neck on your guitar and you have to replace it or anything like that, I want to show you guys that it is pretty simple. It's pretty easy, and I'm going to go show you step by step how to do that. The reason is because, well, for one, I have the project and I enjoy projects like this. They're a lot of fun. But for two, I didn't buy my first electric guitar until last year. I played acoustic guitar from the time I was 12 years old until now. And so I've been playing for a long time, but I didn't play electric. And so seeing people that built their own electric guitars blew me away because I thought it was a super complicated process, and in reality, doing a partscaster is not hard, and you need like $20 or $30 worth of tools to get started. So with that, let's jump into it. Now, some of you guys probably saw this behind me and were wondering, hey, what kind of guitar is that? I've had a couple of people tell me it looks pretty cool. I think it looks like garbage, and I can say that because I built it. So this is a partscaster I built during quarantine. But the problem was, instead of buying a body like this, I tried to build one. I didn't have the right tools, I didn't have a template, and I didn't, I just didn't know what I was doing at that point. So it didn't turn out very good. This neck pickup does sound killer. It's a Wilkinson P90, the bridge Wilkinson. Sounds like garbage, so if you're gonna buy a set of these pickups, just know that you're getting exactly what you pay for. These are pretty inexpensive pickups on Amazon. But all that to say, building a body is very difficult if you don't have the right tools. So if you're gonna start from scratch, please make sure you have the right tools before you start. And that's why I'm doing a partscaster build for you today, is because you can do this with the tools you have laying around your house, as well as a $20 soldering iron kit from Amazon. So with that, let's start the build. All right, guys, so as you can see, we've got the body of the guitar laid out here, little piece of junk in there. So a couple of things that we're gonna show you in specific today is, for one, how to re-drill holes in the neck in case they don't line up. So that's where we're gonna start today. The holes here, as you can see, there's about a ½ inch of space in between the back of the neck, or the neck pocket, and there's about a ¼ inch of the neck that, in between the neck and the holes. So it was drilled differently, which, I mean, shout out to quality control, right, at the factories. So here's how we're gonna do this. We need to make it so that these holes are our standard. So we're gonna actually fill these ones, and then we're gonna re-drill new holes in here to make sure everything's not only lined up perfectly, but also so that we don't have a ¼ inch gap in between here, because the pick guard sits flush with the back of the neck pocket here. So what we're gonna do first is, I've got this little piece of whittled down wood that's about the same size as this, and the drill bit we're gonna be using for these holes is a, let's see, 5/32. Yes, 5/32. So that should be able to fit in there and move around pretty easily. I think these are actually a metric size, but I only have standard for my extra drill bits right now. So we're gonna take a little bit of wood glue, squirt it out on me a little bit. I'm gonna drip a little bit down into the hole there. So the reason I'm putting the wood glue into the holes first, instead of putting it all over the wood, is because I am going to punch this little piece of wood down into the hole, and I want the wood glue to squirt back up around it. So the other thing I did was I took some really heavy grit sandpaper and I sanded it straight back and forth. And the reason is because, for one, I needed to make sure it was the exact size of the hole. and 2, it makes little grooves on the wood, so the wood glue is actually going to hold just a little bit stronger that way, and it won't be quite as, it won't be quite as likely to pop back out. So now we're going to take this, take our hammer, tap that down in there until it stops, which is right about there. I'm going to take my utility knife with a junk blade on it, and I'm going to notch it on that side, and then I'm just going to saw very lightly. And that should pop off flush with the body, or flush, not with the body, excuse me, with the back of the neck. And then we'll clean up this wood glue, and we're going to redo that 3 more times. Next thing that we're going to do is, now that we have the neck, the holes in the neck filled, is we're going to actually take this and we're going to press the neck up against the upper side of the neck pocket. We're going to make sure it's all the way back into the neck pocket, set as deep back as it can, and then we are going to re-drill the holes. So I'm going to set this down and make sure everything is held where it needs to, and then put pressure on it with my thumb. Shoot straight down there. I have tape on my drill bit marking how deep these screws actually go. So it's not from the head of the screws that I'm marking from the bottom of the head. So that's 5/8 of an inch. So with my 5/32 drill bit, put one hole in there. Just gonna check one more time to make sure I am exactly where I need to be. I'm gonna re-drill the front corner. Now I'm gonna put the neck plate on. We're gonna make sure that's straight up and down before we do so. All right, now that I've got these 2 screws set partly in, just for reference, this is where the holes actually went in. So they were just offset of the others. We're gonna make sure this looks good from the top. So right like that is how it's gonna sit. Flip that back over again. Alrighty. And then one thing you want to make sure of is that you're holding the neck as tight up against the neck pocket as you possibly can. That's why I have my hands braced on it like this. All right. So that looks pretty good. Now we need to drill the last 2 so that it'll stay together. All right, guys, so I jumped ahead one step because I had to figure some stuff out. So the bridge sits on there just fine. It's just 5 screws, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right in there. But the problem is a lot of these holes are set wrong. So if I were to put the pick guard over it and line it up with the existing holes for the pick guard, it sits not only almost right on the bridge, so kind of crooked even, and it doesn't sit up to the edge of the neck pocket quite. And you can see there's a little bit of a gap in there because of the way the neck was finished and the way the pocket was routed out. I'm not worried about that because it is set solidly in there on the 4 screws. So what I've got to do is I've actually got to fill all of these holes first before I can come back and put the pick guard on. So I'm going to use the same method we used for filling the holes on the neck, just with taking some scrap wood, putting little bits of glue in there, and then poking these in there. So we'll come back in just a second and show you guys the rest of the wiring. All right, guys, so onto the wiring. I'm gonna clean off the body first just by wiping it a little bit with my hand, just because I feel like that's the courteous thing to do. I feel like somebody is gonna eventually take this guitar apart again. I'm not planning on keeping this. I'm planning on selling it at some point. So I feel like somebody's gonna take this guitar apart and then just be wondering what on earth did that guy do to it. So the wiring now is pretty simple. So I've got my soldering iron. We've got our neck pickup wire and our bridge pickup wire. And I'll see how well I can actually do this while explaining it. I've done these a couple of times before. I'm gonna run those wires back out that cavity. I like to turn the control plate upside down. It just makes everything a little bit easier. So this gray wire, and I'll zoom in a little bit. I'll try not to get my head in the way of the shot so that you guys can actually see what's going on. So this bare wire here actually gets attached to the bridge, to the volume pot, and these white wires get attached to the switch. So we're gonna take the bridge and we're gonna put this little tip of the wire. So there's little holes here, and I'll show you that in just a second once I get this in. Okay. All right, so that wasn't too hard. See these holes here? They already have solder on them from when I took this wiring out of the other guitar. Now, some people will take a wire cutter and just cut the pickup wires off wherever they meet the pots and wherever they meet the switch. That irritates me because it makes it a lot harder for, like, if I was to buy a used set of pickups to put in here, it would make it a lot harder for me to then put that used set of pickups in there because the wires would be too short. I would have to add on extra wire instead of just using what's already there. This way, there's no problem reaching this. I can pull it out of the cavity and work on it over here if I need to, or whatever. And a little bit of glue over there too that I need to clean up. So then we're going to take the silver bare wire. We're gonna melt that right down on volume pot. So when you're soldering, all you're doing, at least on pickups and such like that, all you're doing is bringing the solder to a melting point where it turns to liquid. And at that point, I gotta get this straightened out a little bit. I think I can do this one. Once it runs through, as soon as you remove the soldering iron, it cools down very, very fast. So almost as soon as I pulled the iron away, it hardened on this little blue wire, which is really nice. It makes everything so much simpler. Which is why I left the solder on there last night when I pulled the other guitar apart. Is because I wanted everything to go back together as simple and as easy as possible. Now, there's not a lot of solder on this connection, so I might add just a little bit more once I get these two solidly attached. Now, I'm not a master at soldering and at replacing pickups, so if you're wanting to do this more than just like what I'm doing, where you're just essentially reassembling everything, I would recommend looking up a video on how to do it properly. So I'm gonna add just a little bit of extra solder in there. There we go. And that's just so that connection is solid, is sturdy. And just so you guys know, I am in a well-ventilated area, so soldering like this is not a problem. It is not in any way hurting my lungs. So all that is connected. So now we have to get the output jack rewired. Run that through there. Okay, very good. All right, the last thing that we have to solder before we can put the rest of the guitar together is the output jack. Now that's not hard at all either. Same thing, there's a little bit of solder on either of these wires here. Like I say, from when I took it off, because I didn't cut everything, I just soldered it. I let it pull itself apart by heat and by, I don't even know what. Anyways, so let's actually, I'm gonna have to heat this up just a tiny little bit. I'll try to keep my head out of the way. just to straighten that out so that it'll fit through the hole again. The solder on it was a little too much. Oops. All right, so now I'm gonna need to add some solder in here. So I'll pull that out. And whenever I do soldering, I like to extend it just a little ways away from my hand. So you're gonna heat up the wire and the terminal first and then put your solder on it, like that. And what that does is that the solder, when it's heated up, will actually run towards the hot iron, or if the steel that you've put the iron on before is hot, it will run towards that. So it's good to make sure your heat is on the bottom side. Straighten that out a little bit. So heat that up just a little bit. And there you go. That is attached now, and it should be. Check the connections, but it feels pretty solid. So the yellow wire is gonna go to this terminal here. That's in between these two little plastic pieces. The black wire goes to the top one, and then we're just gonna screw it into place back here. All right, guys, before I finish the restringing, one thing or two things I wanted to show you is that the distance from the E strings out to the edge of the fretboard there, and then out to the edge of the fretboard down here. So there's slightly more distance to the edge of the fretboard on the low E string, and slightly, maybe even slightly less on this side. So that probably means I didn't get the neck 100% square, which really makes me very sad, because I really wanted to do a better job putting this together than what I thought had been done the first time it was built. But then the other thing to check out is, where do the strings sit over the pickup? So if that's possible to adjust to that, that's important, because if your high E string, is not directly over the pickup, it's not gonna grab that sound quite as well. And your treble is, it's really gonna make it hard to pick that signal up. And so your treble will be very soft and very quiet when you're actually playing the guitar. And it looks like I did better about getting it set up like that than the first time. So when I looked at my weight affinity, the string was like way over here. So it wasn't even over the magnet itself. But it looks like it is that way. So it should play fine, it should sound fine. But we're gonna find that out in a minute. All right, so you guys are gonna wanna see how this thing sounds. I'm just gonna use the bridge position, and I'm just gonna roll through a couple of things quick. So obviously a G is what we're gonna play the first chord. Well, for the sound sample anyways, I've been playing with this for a couple minutes. All right, well, that's what I've got for you today. I hope you guys have learned a couple of things about how to do basic repairs and wiring on a Squier Telecaster. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you another time.